Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined today by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
Well, thank you. Good.
Today's podcast is, we're going to talk a little bit about feet and managing just a little like my personal, I have sweaty feet, and I can really get hot when I hike, and I have bad ankles. You know, I tore the ligaments in both my ankles multiple times in high school sports and later in intramurals in college and just throughout. And I've found solutions and things that really help me have great success in spite of, those issues. So I want to get into that today. So before we do, I just want to mention a couple of our affiliate codes to go check out. Sheep Feet, right in the vein of this podcast. Sheep Feet custom orthotic insoles for your boots or your running shoes. They're just the best I've found. And they're just a custom orthotic that is molded to your foot. When you order a pair, they'll send you like an imprint and they'll kind of show you how you do it, but you just put your foot into the mold and you create a couple molds, one for left, one for right foot, and then you mail it back. And they'll send to you basically a custom orthotic that's perfectly made for your foot. Now we're going to get Sheep Feet back on the podcast to follow up on some of what it is that makes their orthotic different than others. But they haven't just been doing this for a while. Caleb's father, I think it is, started doing custom orthotics like 30 years ago or something, and has evolved and learned through 30 years of creating these, how they work and what works best. And theirs are quite unique given the foam that they have, the little heel booster, and the way that your foot is still able to move on top of it. A lot of them custom and like kind of trap your foot. These allow the boot to kind of do its job and the insole to do its job, or your running shoe. Anyway, everyone who's gotten them, I have not heard a single person not rave about them after they've had them.
Really?
Not one. And we've sold a lot. We sold a lot. So check them out. Use the code GRITTY and you get a discount, and it helps us out. But it's a product that everybody should have. If you suffer from plantar fasciitis, if you have problems with your foot cramping, or you get blisters, like the custom orthotics are kind of that first step in moving in the right direction. Most boots that you buy, the insoles are junk. They're just junk. Even Crispies, they're not much to write home about. They really are not. And I've often wondered why boot companies don't kind of include this in their process. But the way that they're custom, I see why. But even then, you'd think they might come out with like a super feet version that's more generic that they throw in each boot. But everyone's foot's so unique, I just don't think that even works. I don't think that even works well. It's not worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So anyway, we'll get them on the podcast for you to learn more about them. But people write in and say, is it worth it? Should I get them? The answer is yes. They're solid. And once you buy them, they last forever. If they do wear out a little bit, you can send them back in and they'll refurbish them and send them back. Like, it doesn't change. They last forever. So buy them once and you just rock them in all your stuff. I used to come back at night, and sometimes after intense hiking, and I'd like point my toes and my feet would cramp into position. I'm like, oh. And then, after a second, they'd relax, and just the stiffness and the tightness of the boots and hiking all day. Once I got the Sheep Feet, those little nuances, those little kind of, they stopped happening. And I never had any like plantar fasciitis or major foot problems other than my feet getting hot and sweaty. I have found just feels like far less fatigue on your boot. And I feel like I have an advantage when I'm side hilling. There's really steep slopes, and something about that stiff footbed in conjunction with your boot, and it all laced up together, just gives you it just helps with that hiking and everything. So anyway, I'm ranting on. Check that out. So getting into the podcast, I have been running Crispy for years. Kendall Card came to me back when they first started. I went to the Crispy factory in Italy, and I met the family. I toured the facility. I met like the 25 people that make all the boots and hand make them all, in Italy. They know what they're doing. They're making a fine boot. Each boot has its pros and cons. Each boot has its little nuances. And I've run, because if I ask for a pair, I get a pair. And I've run the Brickstall. I've run the Thor. I've run the Summits. I've run the Crispy Nevadas, insulated, uninsulated. I've run the Guides. I've run the Wild Rock, the Crispy Wild Rock. I've run the Laponia. There's the Colorado. I've run the Colorado. I've worn a lot of the line, and I put them through. I didn't just wear them for a day. I didn't just climb one hill or hike in the, for a week on an hour-long hike each evening. Like, I took them on major backcountry trips, put them through the paces, and my opinions and my likes and dislikes have evolved over time. So what I have found is recently I discovered something a little new, and that's what this podcast is going to be about. So we went on this recent hunt for black bear, and where we got on Red Lightning and Chocolate 2.0, and we actually relocated those bears from last year, and we took them this year. They evaded us last year, but it's crazy. We went back to where they were last year. We're maybe a week earlier than we were before, and they were there.
Maybe.
They were both there in the same basin a year later, same spot. You think of all the ground they have to cover. We speculated on whether they'd be there or not. It's Ryan's experience that he's come across some of those big bears that they've actually been in the same spot, a year later or 2 years later. And the theory there maybe is that once a bear gets to be a certain maturity, he gets to choose where he wants to be. No one
can pretty much just pick the best spot and hunker down. And once he reaches that critical age and that territory becomes his and he's the dominant bear, it makes sense that he can defend that area and stay there. And in fact, you'll see in the films that we drop, you'll see Red Lightning actually run off like 4 bears in his basin. Oh, really?
Like you see him do it to 1 or 2 bears, but there's a bear in each, like they're 300-400 yards apart. There's 6 of them, 5 or 6 of them on this hill. We're only glassing for like 15 minutes. He comes out and he just starts pushing bears away. The next day we hike up there to get him because we spotted him from low. We weren't sure it was him at first because he's so far away.
A big reddish brownish bear.
Then we got up there. He had pushed the other boys out. He had bullied them out, except for Chocolate, who was kind of on another canyon a little further away, and he'll defer to Red Lightning as well, but he'd still kind of stay close. He'd just go, I'll walk over here, Red was certainly the most dominant in that spot. But when the grizzly bear showed up, which he did, Red's like, I'm out. We lost him for a while as he kind of like evaded the grizzly bear in a choked brush canyon. Then he came back out. I'm giving away too much. But anyway, we just returned from that trip, and we're very, very remote, put on tons of miles. And prior to that, we were on a different trip with Adam Weatherby. Brad Hunt was with us on that one, and the 4 of us went really steep, super steep, like steeper, like Hell's Canyon, some of Hell's Canyon steep. It's just endless steep. There's not a spot where you can get some relief from an angle. It's just an all-day angle. It's never flat almost anywhere you try to stand. When you're in that kind of country, it's fatiguing. Last year, I didn't have my boots laced up, and Ryan and I spotted a bear, and we kind of ran down this hill after it, and it was on a totally flat trail. I mean, flatter than flat. And there was a little rock in the trail, like a golf ball, and I had the boots loose, and I was trying to film Ryan and myself, because that's often what I do. Like, Ryan only has to focus on, like, I'm filming while I'm also running.
Like I'm bound to get hurt at some point. But that's what I do. I sacrifice my body for the footage. But no, we were running. I stepped on a little pebble, and my left ankle just went, just so annoying. But had I had the boots laced up, it wouldn't have happened. But I didn't, and I don't know why I was running with untied boots. I mean, I wasn't really running. We were just I just cooled the feet off, and I had loosely thrown them on, and I should have taken the time to lace them up before we went. But, dude, it was a trail. It wasn't even a hill. That's what gets you, though. But regardless, I hurt my ankle. I just hunted all season despite that. Went through the whole season. I've been running, hiking, still lifting, doing my workouts, and it flares up every now and then. But now I think it's to the point where I need to go get it looked at because it should be stronger now. But I'm fairly certain I've torn a ligament and it just won't heal. So I might have to do, I don't know what I'll have to do. But I've had bad ankles in the past, so I've gone through, I mean, I don't know how many, 50 different ankle braces and ankle casts and stuff when I was playing sports in high school, and then later in intramurals in college, and then later in my life when I was just in the basketball league and the city basketball league in Portland. 2 or 3 nights a week we'd play ball. And I found an ankle brace that just is great. It's the best one out there of all the ones I've used, because you need one that can fit inside a shoe and all of that, but still give you, I need to be able to play like I mean it, and also not be inhibited by my movement, not have it chafe or hurt, but also give me support where it's just not going to roll. I just can't twist my ankle. And that Sweeto Universal ankle brace, SWEDO, it's white. They have a black one. I don't know if there's a difference between the black one and the white one, but I have literally used those since 1993. So
I was 4.
So I've used those that long, and they really haven't changed the design at all because it's almost perfect. So there was a time when my ankles, I had torn the ligaments and I was recovering and getting them healthy again. And I wore the brace, and I'd wear like a Loa Zephyr or a lightweight low top kind of boot, because they tend to accommodate the ankle brace better than like a full on like heavy duty boot with ankle supports kind of built in. Even when I played basketball, it'd be better to wear a low profile tennis shoe, and then an ankle brace than it was to buy a 3/4 top or a high top tennis shoe, because the ankle brace kind of takes up bulk. And I found I didn't need the shoe to have some support in it when the ankle brace did. So the other thing I have found over time, that boots, the lower the sole, the smaller the sole, the lower and the wider it is, the more it fits my hobbit foot, and the less likely I am to roll. The taller the sole and the skinnier the boot, the more likely my ankle is to tilt and pop, right? So that's why, I love hunting in stockisons all day long. I have tough feet when it comes to calluses and any I'll hunt all September like I did in the rocks and the cliffs in pair of stockisons with what I tell people is, how like those monks, they get those reeds and they bang their shins and stuff all the time trying to deaden. When we were kids, we would run on rocks. So basically we were doing like Shaolin monk training on our bottoms of our feet. Well, I have found that when I did a bunch of barefoot running for like 2 years too, hiking barefoot, I don't feel like I can do barefoot pretty good.
You're no princess in the pea.
No, but when I wore what I found though is still a skinny sole is money for me. So I hunted all September with Brad. When I killed both my bulls, I wore stockisons from morning till dark. Nice. Never wore a boot. The only time I wore a boot was to pack out the animal. In Arizona, the whole time, again, stalking mule deer and coos deer, javelina. I'm just wearing stockings. I'm wearing leather moccasins. I'm wearing leather moccasins most of the time. And I never hurt myself. Never sprained an ankle. It's just almost impossible.
And you had to run a couple of times to like get into place.
I ran all the time.
Yeah.
But once I put on a boot, if it's a little too tall or it's not laced right, and it goes for a tennis shoe as well, it's easy for me to roll my ankle. Now, this isn't an issue for guys that just don't roll ankles. There's a lot of them out there that it's never going to happen. I've never had a knee problem in my life. No ACLs, no nut. Like my knees, I can't imagine a situation where my knees have a problem. Other dudes, they do.
I've had like sore knees, but not like hurt.
No, I've
never.
I mean, the loads I've carried on the steeps I've carried and the things I've done, I've never hurt a knee, and it feels indestructible.
I've never broken a bone, and it's not for lack of trying.
But the ankle thing, mine are garbage, and so
Is that just genetic? Do you think?
Moms are bad too. Dads are bad.
That's why I tell my dad's got a foot fetish. Because he's all about his shoes, his braces, his socks.
Ryan said something like, guys with big calves tend to have bad ankles or something like that.
I have gigantic calves.
We both have pretty big calves, I don't know if that's true or not. But what I'll say is this. I found, for me, I'll tell you what my solution is, what's working well for me. Something I discovered on this last hunt. The ankle was hurting so bad after the first leg of the hunt because we were hunting just straight vertical hills, like in ridiculous angles. So my ankle was flaring up, and I didn't have an ankle brace at the time. I was just using the Crispy Nevada uninsulated, and all I'm trying to do with that boot is it's got the ankle brace support system built into it, and it does a lot to support. I really haven't hurt myself, sprained an ankle in it when I had it laced up. Like I said, I didn't have it laced up, and it caused a problem. But anyway, I threw on the ankle brace, and I put the Crispy Nevada on, and I tightened it up, and it just was uncomfortable. It would chafe a little bit. It's a lot to try to stuff into that boot. The upper was causing some chafing, and so I was a little frustrated as I was doing these hikes and trying to get back there. I decided to run with the brace just because the ankle was so sore and swollen, and the boot wasn't doing. Even if I just slightly angled my ankle outward, rolled it just a tiny bit on those hillsides, it was causing immense pain. So I've done something bad to it. So but we still had a couple weeks of hunting to go, and I'm not going to quit. So I ended up grabbing the ankle braces, threw those on, and then I had my Crispy Laponias, which I love those Laponias. Ryan lives in the Laponia, and I got that boot on, and my only beef with it is that it doesn't have ankle support. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's the perfect boot for uninsulated. Mm-hmm. If you're on a hunt where it's hotter weather and everything, it's like ideal. It's a sweet boot. Ryan is in love with the boot. There's a whole army of Laponia converts out there running this boot. So I grabbed the Crispy Laponia, put the little sheep feed insole in there, put on my ankle brace, went for it. I still brought my Crispy Nevada just in case. We got back there and we had llamas, so I had that luxury. Just throw them in a pack bag and bring them. Mark Livesey suggested maybe I do that just in case. I kind of wanted to. You didn't know what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. They felt good. I wore them for like 2 days between the two hunts, just to test, and it felt really good. But when you get back there, maybe not. I wanted more time on them. So I brought the extra boots, never broke them out. That Crispy Laponia with the ankle brace, that Sweeto Universal ankle brace, it laces up. It accommodates the ankle brace nicely. It's got a thin profile so I feel like I'm kind of in moccasins almost. Mm-hmm. With the insole from Sheep Feet, I feel like it adds just a little more stiffness, just a touch that makes it really comfortable. And then I'm hiking on the hillsides, on those steeps, and I'm keeping the edge. The boots are so light, you feel like you're barefoot. You go and hike 10 miles in like a Crispy Nevada, it weighs quite a bit more than a Laponia on your foot. And you think about how many times you lift your foot and put it back down. I was cruising in those Laponia. They were so comfortable. It was kind of silly. And the concern was, okay, well, what happens when we kill a bear up the top of some mountain and we got to hike 5 miles straight down or straight up with a plus 100-pound bag on your back, backpack on your back? How is it going to give you the stability that you need? Well, with the ankle braces, absolutely, I'd say better stability than I've had in any other situation. So now, Brent, I'm leaning toward, especially for the fact that the Laponia is uninsulated, I'm really leaning toward that boot in all my other season hunts with an ankle brace for support. I don't know that they could add any ankle support into that boot and keep it the same boot. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying, yeah.
But I prefer the comfort of the ankle brace myself. I know I can't get injured with it on. I'm not, careful. I don't have to be careful, really. Just like when I played basketball, I didn't have to be careful. The braces just hold your ankle and stuff right where it needs to be and protect it from being injured. And then you got an ultra comfortable boot in combination with it. I was impressed. The thing about the Laponia as well that really helped is blisters form, they're caused, and the rawness of feet are caused from heat and moisture. Friction, heat, moisture, those things cause the problems. If you can keep the heat and the moisture and the friction down, especially the heat and the moisture, one or the other, if you're just wet but cold, you're not as likely to get a blister. If your foot's super hot but not wet, you might get away with it, but I sweat too much. So how do you manage heat, moisture, and the friction? Well, the Laponia they're like the brick stall. A lot of guys talk about this. It's almost like having a screen vent right through the tongue, because that thing just breathes and you get so much air in there. On those hot, sweaty hikes, I usually have to take my boots off a couple of times when I'm running the Crispy Nevada uninsulated. I take the boot off, air my socks out, my feet out, put them back on, because they'll overheat, especially on like a hike, a hard climb, or you're really sweating or going hard, or it's just been a 9-mile sprint, for hours. My feet get hot and I have to air them out and then put them back on. Just get the heat out of the boot, let my feet cool, let the socks cool, and then put my feet back on. They tend to collect more and more moisture and sweat as the days go by because they're like a leather boot that has a hard time airing out without boot dryers. Fast forward to the Laponia. I never had to take my boots off ever. They just breathe. They're just cool. They get that airflow going solid. Combine that with the low profile sole and the lightweight nature of the boot. There's a reason why it's Ryan's favorite boot. He calls it like the perfect boot, And, man, for the season that we were in spring, it felt like the perfect boot. It really does. I can't say enough good things about that boot, surprisingly. It's maybe with the ankle brace, my favorite boot. So, waterproofness. Ryan has put the Crispy Laponia through its paces. He'll put 2,000 miles on a boot until it's falling apart and then get another one. A lot of times, that boot, the thing that goes south first, the only complaint he has really about the boot is the tread on the bottom.
Go smooth on him.
He'd like it to be just a touch deeper tread, so it lasts just a little bit longer. But 2,000 miles is a long time. He'll run those things till this tread is like smooth as a baby's butt, and then he'll get new ones. But that might be something that Crispy looks into modifying. The other thing, though, they're not insulated, so you're not going to use them later in the season like you would now. But Ryan sometimes does. It has to get pretty cold for Ryan to decide to ditch the Laponias. It has to get pretty cold. But I wonder if they could throw in some insulation on the Laponia and then extend, even insulated version, uninsulated. I really do like the boot that much. I'm pretty pleased. I couldn't believe. I mean, I was hauling out some heavy stuff. Those boots they're great, surprisingly. So back to the waterproof thing. He's never had a pair leak ever. Not once, not ever.
Really?
The most waterproof boot he's ever worn. So the same has been true for me. I've worn those things like on tons of hunts that I didn't consider a backpacking hunt, day in and day out, because they're that great kind of, they're almost like a leather moccasin. So in Arizona, I'd rock those, and then I'd wear the moccasins and interchange them here and there. But we went through water and slogs and snow and spring dew in the morning, and dude, not a drop, bone dry. Their waterproof is all get out. So that's another really
that's rad,
important thing. And you combine that with like a Peaks gaiter. And on this hunt, what I did, I didn't want to bring rain pants, so I brought the Kuiu Katana pant, which I raved about on a gear dump or gear discussion the other day. I'm really impressed with those Kuiu Katana pants. They're unreal. They're like the perfect blend and weight for spring and even summer and into September, I think. A lot like a Piranha Zion, but way more durable, better cut for hunting. And I don't know, they have that stretch, but they don't overly stretch out. Like your Zion will be 2 sizes, 3 sizes bigger by the end of a hunt.
Yeah.
I'll be snagging them on, stobs sticking off of deadfall as I climb over it because my crotch is hanging to my knees by the time we're ready to go home. Those Katana, they just stay fitted, but they also dry out wicked fast. I don't know what Kuiu's done, what material they're using, but I sweat like a banshee. As soon as I stop moving, it's like they dried. I had other pants that you sweat in them, they'll stay sweaty. Like the Sitka Ascent, they'll dry out right away. These perform similarly, but they have a little heavier. They're quieter than the Ascent pant, and the Ascent pant really does make you feel naked. These pants, you actually felt like you had something on. I like feeling naked. Don't get me wrong. But they would have been too cold. They're not the right weight. I mean, it's really got to be summer for me to really like the Ascent. And then it's too loud because I want to spot and stock and do other things in them, and they're just too loud. The Apex is a great pant for being quiet and having that breathability and that comfort. The Sitka Apex, but they fall apart pretty easy. So I don't know. I'm just saying that the Katana dried out really fast. And when I got wet in the river, because we'd cross, I'd take my boots and socks off, and I'd roll my pants up to my knees, but it'd be thigh deep. So the whole, from the thighs down, my pants would be drenched from a river crossing. Within a few minutes, 10, 20 minutes, even on a damp day, they'd dry out. So I was really impressed with how well they performed, how fast they dried. Better than almost any pant I've ever worn, which is a big deal. It means you can get your pants soaked, and then almost with no effort, they'll dry right out. It's pretty impressive. So that allowed me to say, I ain't bringing rain pants.
That's cool. But
I have gaiters. So one of the things I mentioned in an earlier show, John Barklow mentioned this to me years ago, and I do it today. I put my Laponia, I had my pants on, my Katanas. I put my Laponia on with the ankle brace, the sheep feet insole insert, and then I put my gaiter on under my pants. So I took my Peaks gaiter, put it on, and then I put my pants over the top, especially on some of those stormy, rainy, wet days. And then I had a rain jacket on the top. So picture this, rain jacket on the top, pair of pants that aren't waterproof, but from the knees down, I'm waterproof because I have my gaiter on under my pants. What this allows is if I were to wear the gaiter over the pants, sure, you look cooler, but when your pants get wet, that moisture wicks down and goes under the gaiter instead of over it. And your pants, anything that's dry, that saturates, it wicks. It draws water to the dry part of the garment. And you have gravity against you as well. So you're hiking, your rain jacket is shedding all the water. It's hitting your thighs and your knees. Now it's going down and wicking down under your gaiter, getting into your sock, and then it wicks through your sock and into your boot, right?
Gotcha.
But when your pant is over top your gaiter, your pant's getting soaked, but you can't feel the moisture except from mid-thigh to your knee, right? Because in that space, you feel the moisture. Most of it's dry from the pockets up because the water coming off doesn't go right to your pant, right? It goes kind of, it drops and catches on your thighs as you're walking or something, mid-thigh. So you got this little like 12-inch area that's wet on your pant that you feel. But from that point up, your body's dry, and from that point down, you're dry. From basically the top of your gaiter, you're dry. When the pants get soaked, all that moisture and gravity is wicking downward over top your gaiter into the ground. And with the crispy Laponia being as waterproof as it is, we're walking through stream beds, that are mid-calf height. I'm not getting any water inside.
Really?
No, if you cinch that gaiter down and you get through it pretty quick, it takes quite a bit of pressure, water pressure, for water to get around. You have to have enough water pressure to force the water under the gaiter when you step in a creek bed and push that water up and then over your boot and into your pants. Like you can't party there for very long. But if you like run through a creek bed that's 10 feet wide, that's over your ankle, you get through it quick. Water doesn't find its way through the gaiter setup. And that's true for, most gaiter setups. So I've splashed knee deep through stuff running through in BC and managed to keep, I'm running through knee deep water, like 15 feet across. You get to the other side and your feet are still dry. In fact, one of the things that causes moisture to break a barrier, a waterproof barrier in a boot, is it's all about water pressure. So standing in a puddle that's 3 inches deep, or that goes over about that covers your foot up, there's not a lot of water pressure trying to break through the waterproof barrier right there. There's water, sure, there's water around it, but the deeper it gets, or the more the water flows, the more it has pressure to push into it. Back in the day, I was talking to a boot builder, and they were saying that one of the things that pushes water, I was saying, when I walk through creeks, my boot never leaks. But when I walk through, a mile of wet grass, it leaks in the first, 10 minutes. How come it leaks it doesn't leak when I'm underwater with it, when my boot's submerged, but it leaks when I walk through grass? And what I learned was it was pressure. The pressure from the grass and all the brush pushing the water into the membrane and through the membrane is what can make it leak. So when you measure something's waterproofness, it has to do with pounds of pressure pushing the water in. How many pounds of pressure can it take of the water breaking through the membrane? So anyway, running the pants over the gaiter over the boot, I didn't need rain pants. And rain pants is just something I have to carry that I don't feel like I really need. And then that night, I would dry it out right away because the Kuiu pants are ridiculous. They just dry out. So by the time I'm getting in bed, even if they were a little bit damp, I just got in my sleeping bag with them just slightly damp. They dried out so well. They never were really damp, but they dried out in moments inside the sleeping bag, So, and that way I didn't have to hike with rain pants on because I can get sweaty even if it's raining. So I do it's almost like, you got maximal airflow from the waist to the knees, where it's like you're in a kilt. But from the knees down, you're waterproof. From the waist up, you're waterproof. It just creates a nice, we hiked like 9 miles that day in the rain and snow. but having that airflow and just the little coolness I actually kind of like it. So I've done that for years where I've ditched rain pants. It's not for everybody, but with pants that dry like the Katana, you can do that if you wanted to. I certainly prefer to hike lots of miles without having rain pants on. If I'm really on the go and on the move, or if I'm hunting, I don't want rain pants on because they make noise. That's another thing with the gaiter under your pant. Instead of the gaiter, which has a rougher outer material, it can brush on brush and make noise. With your pants over it, the pants that touches brush is much quieter than the Cordura hard outer layer of a gaiter. And so you can be much sneakier and quieter with your gaiter under your pant than with it over your pant. Ryan, I think he's too into fashion to tuck his pant over the gaiter. But I'm just not that vain. You can tell how vain he is just because his luscious locks that he insists on having. So just different that way. But that's a little tidbit. So Mark Livesey was on the hunt with us from Treeline Pursuits, and he sells the e-scouting courses, the elk e-scouting. He's working on a bear module, and he went on this hunt just so he could add tons of bear hunting info. He was just a sponge. He took notes, the stuff that we kind of take for granted to talk about. He catches every detail. He's taking photos of the actual flowers these bears are eating, where to find them, when they grow, why the flowers are supple and delicious up top, but are shriveled down at lower elevations, what those elevation levels were, like details. But Mark was having trouble with his, he has tough feet. Like he's an Ironman, 3-time Ironman competitor, something like that. I think he played arena football. Like Mark's an athlete. You can't tell. Now he looks like a pirate, with an earring and a do-rag and llamas. But Mark is, he's a badass. I can't say enough about that guy. Nobody just does an Ironman.
Yeah.
The person's made out of something different. And although Mark's body may not have been up to the challenge, his mind was. And so he did it. He did it all. He went hard. But his feet, I got a good look at his feet. That sounds weird, but they're calloused to all ends. And he's wearing holes through darn tough wool socks. He doesn't run a sock liner. He just wears the darn tough in his boots, but he's got tough feet. But we were on such steep country, like I said before, like just straight up. And when you hunt like that all day, every day, and it was like 75 degrees and you're sweating and hiking and exerting energy, those feet are going to get sweaty. And he had a full grain leather boot on. So your feet are going to get sweaty. He has one layer of sock, no sock liner to wick moisture. But some people don't need that. I do. And then he had holes in his darn tough that they're like a new pair, and he's getting holes. Didn't have a sheep feet insert. He's having some trouble with plantar fasciitis lately that he hadn't had in the past. It's flaring up and it's getting painful. But we go on this hunt, and I think the plantar on one foot's worse than another, and so you kind of favor one. That can cause a problem. But just the heat and the steeps and the angles, just the side hilling, like straight up, straight down, fine. But the side hilling, which we were doing a lot of, that's usually where you get crushed if you have blisters or you start to get blisters. Now, Mark never got a blister, but his feet were on fire. Mark's feet are so calloused, it's almost impossible for him to get a blister on the surface. If Mark gets a blister on his feet, they're so calloused, it'll be like a 1/4 inch deep, which will be a terribly painful blister. terribly painful blister. But he felt his feet were on fire. Now, I always bring Leukotape with me, and that stuff is strange, but it can make a huge difference. And I can't stress it enough because you can use it in so many ways. And I would say like 90% of the time, 95% of the time that I hunt, I never use tape. Never. But there have been some hunts for some reason where maybe it was a combination of factors where my feet got raw for some reason. And Leukotape has saved the day. And on this hunt...
How do you spell Leuko?
It's Leuko, I think. Leukotape. And it doesn't even feel sticky, and when you put it on, it kind of doesn't adhere to your skin. It sort of like flops off, So you want to warm it up as much as you can. So you put it in your hand or your pocket or whatever. You try to get that, put it in the sun, get it as warm as you can because it sticks way better when it's warm. And then what I ended up doing, because my ankle brace was chafing a little bit, I don't normally wear one, right? I don't have calluses built up where that brace was rubbing and whatnot because I hadn't worn one, especially on a hunt, or I hadn't worn it in the Laponia before, and it wears a little different, right? When you have a boot in there too. So I ended up putting a strip down my Achilles tendon and down to my heel of Leukotape. Problem solved. No discomfort. Feels good. Leukotape will stay on your body for like a week. Yeah. In fact, once you stick it on, you're really not taking it off for a few days. Otherwise, you could take some of your skin with it. So I ran a little Leukotape there. On the pack out, I was carrying a stupid heavy load with Ryan's bear and our whole camp, and we were going straight vertical, and it was a hot day. And because I'm running the Laponia with a brace in it, the Laponia is a little bit too tight. Just a touch and I only notice it when you got 100 pounds in your pack and you're going straight down a hill and your toes are kind of scooching into the front of the boot more than they normally would. And the Laponia is a softer boot. So I did find that, with heavy loads, I am sliding into the edge of the boot a lot more than I would with a Nevada or something. But wasn't a big deal. I put tape over some of the hot spots on my toes, back in business, right? Mark was bad. Like he was hiking, and it wasn't the loads and it wasn't the endurance that was slowing Mark down. It was the fact that his feet were on fire with hot spots and soreness. So what we ended up, I'm like, Mark, you got to throw some tape on. He's like, I don't know, do I need it? Because my feet are so tough. I've never done that kind of stuff really before. I did carry Leukotape, but I never used it. So I just left it out of the bag, and I'm like, put it on there. So he just put tape on all the spots that were hot. Then that sucker was out hiking me, like just like zooming places and running. I'm like, slow down, man, slow down. The tape was at that point, in that juncture for Mark, was a game changer. Allowed him to be to actually use the. A lot of times what slows a guy down is his feet, not his physical capability, not anything else, but just the pain in the feet from blisters and hot spots and such. So having Leukotape on hand, taping up, it was the right move at that point. And it completely, man, it's way better than pain. Like you can take some ibuprofen or something or whatever. The tape removed more pain than anything. Like it's just gone, problem solved. So Leukotape is should be in everyone's kit. I don't care. You never know what might happen, what might be wearing raw. So the other thing that I've used Leukotape for, this is with my Stone Glacier, Initial Ascent, other packs I've used. When you get like 150 pounds in your pack, or 100 pounds, just your pack's heavy, and you have your belt on here. Some packs worse than others. They can rub here in your lumbar area or just above your booty,
just where your shirt and your
lumbar pad. Yeah, And sometimes your belt or your belt loop can like be digging into you because it's sandwiched between the lumbar pad of your pack and your skin. Sometimes you need to pull your pants up higher or lower so that you're not getting that pebble type. It's like having a rock right there in that exact spot between your lumbar pad and your skin that's just rubbing if you have a belt loop there that's just chafing or something like that. And so it happens on every pack, up to a certain weight, and the more you carry the load on your hips, the more pressure there can be from that pad because it's a heavy, heavy load. So what I'll do, I might pull just my merino top down there so it's between, and my pants are actually sagging a little bit under the lumbar pad, or I'll pull the pants up higher so the belt and stuff is a little bit higher on my back so that I don't have that pressure point. So it's just the smoother part of my pants and my merino top right there sandwiched in between. And it works great. But the other thing that you can do is, and I've done this many times, is you just you find that spot that has a little pebble from, little pebble type feeling from the chafing from like your belt or your belt loops or something. Rather than adjusting your pants constantly and dealing with that, you just throw a little piece of Leukotape, a couple strips, boom, boom, right there where that pack kind of touches or where that hot spot can try to form. And then you just light it out. Just go. You don't have to worry about any chafing or any discomfort or anything. So Leukotape helps with that too. And some guys there's some other brands that I didn't mention that are notorious for causing people to get with heavy loads to have their backs bleed. There's a couple backpack brands. Initial Ascent's not one of them. Stone isn't one of them. But you can think of the rest that actually will cause a guy's back to bleed. And guys will have those problems. Again, that has more to do, I think, with your anatomy and the fit of the pack or the design of the pack in general, or maybe how you have the pack fitted on you or how you're running it, than it does necessarily the pack itself. You could take a pack and have it fitting wrong, and you're going to get that. Generally, there's something you can do to fix it, or that pack just isn't going to work for you. It just, the way it's designed, it has limitations, and it's never going to fit your body well. Especially if you're wearing a pack where the belt just doesn't stick and it kind of slowly slides down, like all the time, no matter what you do. Your anatomy probably isn't suited for that pack ever. And that pack can't overcome, your build. And another guy might say it doesn't slide at all, but I've worn packs where they just slide. They just keep sliding down. And no matter how tight, if I get it tighter and tighter, it starts cutting off circulation. Just never does carry well. I end up having too much weight compressing my spine and on my shoulders, and carrying way too much weight on my chest and up high than on my hips. And that's fine until you get older and older and older and you start having back problems and it does whatever else. And I spend so much time under a load in a backpack. Half the year is out in the country doing that. I want to save my back. So something that carries well on the hips, I think, is smart. It's the way to go. The body's much more conditioned and built for that than it is on your spine and on your back the whole time. But a little Leukotape back there can be the lifesaver on your lumbar there when you're carrying some ridiculously heavy pack. So anyway, like I said, mark through on the tape. And then as we went through water holes and everything else and hiked barefoot, he'd throw on some Crocs to cross a stream. That tape doesn't come off. It pretty much will stay for a few days. The hotter the tape is, the warmer it is when you stick it on, and the more you can kind of rub it and warm it on and kind of get it to stick better on your foot. And once you get your sock on over that. Now the socks, we talked about socks. Mark puts holes in darn tough. They have a lifetime warranty, so he mails them in. They send them back. Perhaps it's because I have a sock liner. I've never done that. I don't know how you wear a hole. I mean, there's too much rubbing if you're rubbing a hole in a new pair of Darn Tough. But so what I'm running is I like those Smart Wool thin liner sock liners. That Fox River, is that what another guy mentioned, checking some of those out? I'm going to check out some other sock liners. They have to be wool or some kind of wool synthetic blend, but mostly wool. I've tried other sock liners. My feet sweat too much. Synthetic doesn't work. A full day of synthetic, and they've soaked up so much sweat and dirt and grime that they're not working anymore. It's got to be wool. Wool just withstands moisture and sweat like no man-made material I've ever really run. And then on the outside, I've been wearing those Gore socks, but they don't make them anymore. And so I've been wearing mostly Darn Tough. I did Farm to Feet for a while. They're not as good as Darn Tough. And then, and like I said, a little Leuko. But I'm going on this grizzly hunt here really soon in Alaska. At least there's a plan to. We'll see flights and everything else. But if it all pans out, hopefully I come back with a grizz. But I'm going to be hitting the mountains in Alaska, and we're going to land someplace in the middle of nowhere and try to find big old grizz. And I'm going to wear the crispy Laponia with the ankle braces. The coldest it will get would probably be 20 degrees, but it'll probably stay above 30, 35, 32, somewhere above freezing most of the time. It could dip. And that's at night, in general, but during the day, it could go as high as 65, maybe even 70. Probably not. It'll probably be in the 50s. But I found that the Laponia for me, and I'm kind of a weenie with cold feet. They get cold. That's why I like the Wild Rock, totally insulated later in the season when things get hot, or things get cold. But I'm really enjoying the Laponia, and I think the weather is going to work perfect for it. I did get a little bit cold when it dropped below 30 in the Laponia, but there's a lot of hiking going on, a lot of moving that we're going to be doing, and most of the day they're the right boot for the job. It's only early in the morning, or if you sit still for excessive hours and it's a really blustery cold day. But when it's really crappy like that, I take my boots off and I crawl inside my sleeping bag and I glass from inside my bag. Like, why not? I have it. It's with me. I throw my tarp on the ground, and I have maybe one above. We might take a seek outside shelter and like a teepee, and we'll just open the two front doors all the way. We'll get under that if it's drizzly. I'll throw my tarp on the ground. I'll get comfy in my sleeping bag, and I'll glass for hours and hours. One of the keys to successful glassing is to be extremely comfortable. Because if your hands are freezing or your feet are freezing or whatever, you're just not going to sit there and pick apart the mountain the way you are if you get comfortable. So get comfortable when you glass. If you're going to sit and glass for hours and hours, the same thing with the tree stand. The way you stay in a tree stand is get ultra comfortable in a tree stand. If you're freezing your butt off the whole time in a stand and you're going to quit, you're not going to do as good a job or perform as great a hunt. So that's a trick to it in and itself. But I'm going to wear the Laponia for the hunt and I'll report back. But Ryan's already put it through the paces. It's his favorite boot. But I'm leaning in that direction in combination with the ankle brace. Like I said, my only problem really was the lack of ankle support. But with that Sweeto universal brace, it might be the perfect blend. We'll see. It'll be a fun continued experiment. I mean, I used it for 12, 14 days on this last hunt that way, and through all the same kind of temperature ranges that I'm expecting in Alaska. And it was flawless. So I think I'm going to have the same experience, but I'll be able to double down on it because I'll have done it there as well. So we shall see. But anyway, I thought y'all might find this discussion useful. I don't think Mark's going to get himself some sheep feet, and Mark is going to get himself some Leukotape. And I don't know if he'll run sock liners or not. But I think he needs some Laponias.
Yeah.
But everybody has a favorite boot. Mark has a favorite boot. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't a Crispy. I don't know what it was. Loa, Kenetrek, I'm not sure. But that Laponia standing out for me. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Like I said, use the code GRITTY over at Sheep Feet. Get yourself hooked up over there. And Treeline Pursuits. If you haven't signed up for the e-scouting course, you should do that. You should buy that. Use the code GRITTY over there. It's worth every penny. The value you get for this, it's worth every penny. And the education you get on e-scouting for elk, and again, what you learn from this, you can use the same skill set, the same tools, I should say, for all the animals, deer, mule deer, bear, all of it. So check it out. It's worth it. There's other apps you can use with it. Mark isn't exclusive to like Onyx or Go Hunt or anybody. He is an equal user of Google Earth, of Gaia, of Onyx, all the different tools that are available. And you combine all those tools together and you have a powerful e-scouting. There's things that Mark knows on e-scouting that he teaches you in that class that nobody knows. Nobody knew until Mark taught them. And the things that Google Earth can do, you have no idea. No idea. So he was showing me this thing, Brent, where me and Ryan and him were looking at where we were going to glass from. And what we wanted to be able to do was kind of see into some certain basins, but from a vantage point over here, because it was logistically pretty tough to get over there. He showed us where you can say, I'm standing right here, and then it will shade a certain color, the 3D map, everything that you can see from that position.
No way.
So if there's a mountain in the way, or you want to see into the bottom of a basin, you're like, I think I could see it from there. He will pinpoint the exact glassing spot that you need to be to see all the best stuff.
That's crazy.
And then, like, if you go to roll around the other side of the hill where you want to stand to see the maximum amount on the other side, it literally shades everything that you will have visibility from. At 6 feet, standing at 6 feet, it counts for the trees in your way.
How? Magic, black magic.
It's called satellites.
Okay.
And imagery. So he literally can. It says at 6 feet. It's standing at 6 feet tall from a 6 foot position right here, eyeballs at this point. This is what you can see. And if there are trees or things in the way in front of that vantage point, it won't shade those spots. You move over to an opening where there's a bunch of dead trees, and you can see it open up. It's a really cool feature, but that's the sort of stuff Mark has dialed. So it's worth the class. Go check it out and use the code GRITTY there. And then use the code GRITTY for OnX. If you got to renew or get a new, or you never had it, use the code GRITTY. You're going to save 20% at OnX, and that is awesome. So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.